The world often feels like a storm that refuses to subside. We are constantly bombarded by shifting circumstances, unexpected tragedies, and the relentless noise of a society that demands our attention. It is easy to feel like a leaf caught in a gale, tossed about by forces far beyond our control. But what if the most significant source of your strength was never meant to be found in the outside world? Nearly 2,000 years ago, a man who held the weight of the Roman Empire on his shoulders sat down to write words that would echo through the corridors of time. Marcus Aurelius did not write for an audience, he wrote for himself, as a reminder of the fundamental truth of human existence. He observed that you have power over your mind, not outside events. He urged himself to realize this, promising that in this realization, he would find strength. At first glance, this might sound like a simple platitude or a form of passive resignation. However, if we look closer through the lens of modern psychology, we find a profound blueprint for emotional mastery. The power Aurelius speaks of is not the power to change what happens to us, but the power to dictate what those events mean to us. Imagine for a moment the sheer scale of the chaos he faced, from devastating plagues to constant border wars and political betrayals. Yet he understood that the internal landscape is the only territory where a person can truly be sovereign. This realization acts as an anchor in the midst of a turbulent sea. When we focus on outside events, we remain in a state of perpetual vulnerability, because we are betting our well-being on things that are inherently volatile. We wait for the weather to change, for people to treat us better, or for the economy to stabilize before we allow ourselves to feel at peace. This is a recipe for chronic anxiety and a sense of helplessness. Psychologically, this shift in focus from the external to the internal is known as developing an internal locus of control. It is the understanding that while we cannot choose our cards, we are the sole authors of how we play the hand. Aurelius was not suggesting that we become indifferent or cold to the world around us. Rather, he was advocating for a radical form of responsibility. When you accept that your mind is your own, you stop being a victim of your environment. You begin to see that between every external stimulus and your internal response, there is a tiny, sacred space. In that space lies your freedom. If a stranger insults you, the event has happened, but the harm only exists if your mind accepts the insult as a truth or a personal injury. Strength in this context is not the absence of emotion or the suppression of pain. It is the unshakable clarity that your core self remains untouched by the fluctuations of fortune. Think about the last time you felt truly overwhelmed by a situation at work or in a relationship. The weight you felt was likely not just from the event itself, but from the narrative your mind constructed around it. We tell ourselves stories of, "This shouldn't be happening," or "I can't handle this." Aurelius challenges us to strip away these narratives and look at the raw reality. By reclaiming the power over our thoughts, we transform our psychological architecture. We move from a state of reaction to a state of intention. This is where true resilience is forged, not in the avoidance of struggle, but in the mastery of our internal interpretation of that struggle. As we dive deeper into the mechanics of the human psyche, we see how this ancient wisdom aligns with the most effective modern therapeutic practices. Our brains are naturally wired for survival, which often means they are hyper-tuned to threats in our environment. This evolutionary trait served us well when threats were physical predators, but in the modern world it often leads us to obsess over things we cannot change. We find ourselves trapped in a loop of what-if scenarios and if-only regrets. These thoughts are the outside events of the mental world. They are the noise that drowns out our innate strength. To find that strength, we must learn to distinguish between the noise and the signal. The signal is your will, your values, and your capacity to choose your perspective. Everything else is just the weather. It may be raining, it may be thundering, but you are the mountain, not the clouds. The mountain does not ask the clouds to move. It simply stands firm and unyielding, regardless of the season. When we stop fighting the reality of external events, we conserve an enormous amount of energy. This energy can then be redirected toward the one thing that actually matters, our own conduct and character. This is the essence of psychological agency. It is the quiet confidence that comes from knowing that no matter what the world throws at you, you have a sanctuary within that remains inviolate. Consider the concept of emotional contagion, where we unconsciously pick up the stress and negativity of those around us. Without the boundary that Aurelius describes, we are like sponges. absorbing every bit of toxicity we encounter. But when we realize our power is internal, we become more like a filter. We can acknowledge the negativity of others without letting it penetrate our own sense of self. This is not a state you reach overnight. It is a discipline of the mind that requires constant practice. Every moment of frustration is an opportunity to reclaim your power. Every time you feel the urge to blame an outside event for your unhappiness, you are at a crossroads. One path leads to the exhaustion of victimhood, while the other leads to the quiet strength of self-mastery. The world will always provide reasons to be upset, angry, or afraid. The news will always have a crisis, and people will always be unpredictable. If your internal state is a reflection of these things, you will never be at rest. Finding strength means building a foundation that does not shake when the ground moves. It means looking at a difficult situation and saying, "I cannot control that this happened, but I am the master of how I will move forward." This mindset shifts your brain out of the fight or flight response and into the executive functioning mode. You become a problem solver rather than a person being solved by their problems. You begin to see that your mind is a garden, and you are the gardener. Outside events may throw seeds over the fence, but you decide which ones are allowed to take root. You decide which thoughts are nurtured and which are pulled out like weeds. The realization Aurelius speaks of is a moment of profound awakening. It is the moment you stop looking at the horizon for a savior and realize that the savior has been within you all along. This is the core of psychological endurance. It is the ability to maintain your integrity and your peace, even when the world is in chaos. As we explore the layers of this philosophy, we will see how it applies to our modern stresses, our relationships, and our deepest fears. We will see how the brain can be retrained to prioritize internal values over external validation. And we will discover that the strength Marcus Aurelius promised is not a myth, but a biological and psychological reality available to anyone willing to claim it. To understand the true weight of this internal power, we must look at how our brains are constructed to interpret reality. We often operate under the illusion that our eyes and ears are windows providing a direct, unfiltered view of the world. In reality, the brain is locked in a dark chamber, receiving nothing but electrical impulses and chemical signals. It is an architect, building a model of the world based on expectations, past experiences, and current emotional states. When Marcus Aurelius tells us that we have power over our minds, he is describing the cognitive process of appraisal. An event occurs, but it is the appraisal, the label we give it, that determines our emotional response. If you lose your job, the external event is simply a change in your employment status. The mind, however, immediately begins to construct a narrative of failure, scarcity, or injustice. It is this narrative, not the job loss itself, that causes the agonizing secondary suffering we experience. By practicing the art of objective observation, we can learn to strip away the adjectives we attach to our circumstances. We can see the event as it is, without the added layer of mental storytelling. This is where the strength begins to manifest, as we stop bleeding energy into ghosts of our own making. Consider the concept of neuroplasticity, which proves that our mental habits actually reshape the physical structure of our brains. When we habitually react to outside events with panic or resentment, we strengthen the neural pathways associated with stress. However, when we consciously choose a different perspective, we are literally rewiring ourselves for resilience. This is not mere positive thinking, it is the deliberate cultivation of a steady mind. It requires us to become the observer of our own thoughts, watching them arise without being swept away by them. When you feel a surge of anger because someone cut you off in traffic, that is an outside event attempting to seize your mind. The strength comes from the split-second realization that your peace is worth more than the satisfaction of a reaction. You are the one who decides if that stranger has the power to ruin your morning. If you hand them that power, you are essentially making your happiness a hostage to the behavior of everyone around you. Think about how exhausting it is to live that way, constantly scanning the environment for things to be offended or worried by. We have become a society of professional worriers, mistaking our anxiety for a form of preparation. We believe that if we think about a problem enough, we can somehow control the outcome. But rumination is not problem solving. It is simply the mind spinning its wheels in the mud. The strength Aurelius describes is the ability to hit the brakes on that spinning wheel. It is the clarity to say that while the problem exists, the suffering I am adding to it is optional. This shift in perspective is particularly vital in our modern digital age, where the outside events are no longer just in our physical vicinity. We carry a portal in our pockets that connects us to every tragedy, every controversy, and every curated life on the planet. Our minds are being pulled in 1,000 different directions at once, often by things that have zero impact on our actual lives. This is the ultimate test of our internal sovereignty. If we do not consciously decide what we care about, the world will decide for us. We will find ourselves angry about things we didn't know existed 5 minutes ago. We will find ourselves feeling inadequate compared to people we will never meet. Realizing your power over your mind means setting boundaries for what you allow into your mental sanctuary. It means recognizing that your attention is your most valuable currency, and you should be very careful where you spend it. When you withdraw your attention from the trivial and the uncontrollable, you suddenly find a reservoir of energy you didn't know you had. This energy can be channeled into your work, your relationships, and your personal growth. True strength is quiet. It doesn't need to shout or prove itself. It is the person who can remain calm while everyone else is losing their heads. It is the person who can face a medical diagnosis or a financial setback and still find a way to be useful to others. Psychologically, this is the pinnacle of emotional maturity. It is the transition from being a child of circumstance to being an adult of intention. Many people fear that if they stop worrying about outside events, they will become complacent or lazy. In reality, the opposite is true. When you are no longer paralyzed by fear of what might happen, you are free to act with much greater effectiveness. You are not acting out of desperation, but out of a clear-eyed assessment of what needs to be done. Imagine a surgeon in the middle of a difficult operation. If they are focused on the outside event, of the potential failure or the pressure of the situation, their hands will shake. But if they are focused entirely on the task at hand, governed by their training and their mind, they perform at their best. Life is the surgery, and your mind is the instrument. If the instrument is blunt or vibrating with anxiety, you cannot do your work well. We must also address the deep-seated human need for certainty. We want to know that we are safe, that we are loved, and that our future is secure. Outside events can never give us that certainty because the world is inherently uncertain. The only true security is the knowledge that you can handle whatever comes your way. This is the strength that Aurelius promises. It is not the strength of a wall that hopes the storm isn't too strong. It is the strength of the wind itself, which can blow through any obstacle. When you realize that your mind is the source of your reality, the fear of the future begins to dissolve. You stop asking, "What if the worst happens?" and start saying, "Whatever happens, I will meet it with my full presence." This level of self-trust is the ultimate psychological shield. It allows you to live more fully and love more deeply because you are no longer protecting yourself from the possibility of pain. You know that pain is an outside event, but your response to it is within your domain. You can experience grief without being destroyed by it. You can experience failure without becoming a failure. This distinction is the key to a life of meaning and purpose. It allows you to take risks that others won't take because your self-worth isn't tied to the outcome. It is tied to the integrity of your effort and the quality of your thoughts. As we navigate the complexities of modern life, we must constantly return to this central truth. Every time you feel the weight of the world on your shoulders, ask yourself which part of that weight is the event and which part is your interpretation. Usually the event is a small stone and the interpretation is a massive mountain. You have the power to put the mountain down. You have the power to look at the stone and see it for what it truly is. This is the work of a lifetime, but it pays dividends and peace of mind that no external success can match. It transforms your relationship with yourself, turning your mind from a critic into an ally. When your mind is your ally, you are never truly alone and never truly powerless. How does this internal power manifest when we interact with the people in our lives? We often believe that our happiness depends on the approval or the behavior of our loved ones, our colleagues, or even total strangers. We unintentionally become emotional chameleons, subconsciously changing our internal state to match the external social climate we find ourselves in. But when you realize that your mind is your own, you stop looking for others to validate your worth or define your mood. This creates a profound and lasting shift in the way you navigate every relationship in your life. You stop being a person who merely reacts to the provocations of others and start being a person who responds with intention. You recognize that their behavior is an outside event, a reflection of their own internal struggle and history. It has nothing to do with your inherent value, unless you allow your mind to accept their projection as an absolute fact. This doesn't mean you become cold or indifferent to the people around you. Rather, it means you become a source of genuine stability for them. Because you are no longer easily shaken by their moods or opinions, you can offer real compassion instead of defensive anger. Strength is found in the ability to remain kind when you are met with hostility, not out of weakness, but out of mastery. It is found in the ability to remain patient when the world is rushing you and demanding your immediate emotional compliance. Modern psychology suggests that we are often more afraid of our feelings than we are of the actual events themselves. We are afraid of the visceral feeling of shame, the sharp sting of rejection, or the dull ache of feeling inadequate. But a feeling is simply a physical sensation coupled with a narrative thought that our brain has constructed. When you reclaim power over your mind, you realize that you can sit with a difficult feeling without letting it break your spirit. You can feel the heat of anger or the chill of fear and simply watch it pass through you like a cloud passing over a massive mountain. You are the vast space in which the feeling happens, not the feeling itself. This level of detachment is not about checking out of life. It is about checking into a deeper level of reality. It is about recognizing the fundamental difference between the frantic drama of the ego and the underlying stillness of the true self. The ego is always concerned with outside events, with winning, with being right, and with how it is being perceived by others. The self is only concerned with the truth and with the alignment of your actions with your deepest internal values. As you move through your day, you will notice countless subtle moments where you are tempted to give your power away to the world. You might give it to a negative comment on social media, a frustrating work email, or a minor delay in your personal plans. In each of these moments, the wisdom of the past stands beside you, reminding you that you have a choice in how to perceive the obstacle. Ask yourself if this specific event is truly worth the high price of your internal peace and mental clarity. Nothing is truly yours except for your own character, your own integrity, and the quality of your own thoughts. Everything else in this life is essentially on loan from the universe and can be taken back or changed at any moment without notice. This perspective might seem harsh at first, but it is actually the ultimate form of psychological liberation. When you stop trying to own and control the world, you finally become the sovereign owner of yourself. You begin to appreciate things more because you understand that they are fleeting and precious. You love more intensely because you are not trying to manipulate or control the person you love for your own security. You work with more focus and creativity because you are not obsessed with the external rewards or the fear of failure. The strength you find is a quiet, steady flame that cannot be extinguished by the shifting winds of fortune. It is the strength that allowed a leader to rule with justice and mercy, even when surrounded by the chaos of a crumbling empire. It is the same strength that is available to you right now, in this very heartbeat and in this very room. You do not need to travel to a distant mountaintop or study for decades in isolation to find this power. You only need to turn your gaze inward and acknowledge the truth of your own psychological agency. You are the captain of your soul and the absolute master of your internal mental domain. The world will continue to be the world. It will be unpredictable, sometimes unfair, and often chaotic. But you will no longer be its victim, because you have chosen to build your home on a foundation that does not shake. You will be its observer, its participant, and its calm, unmoving center. Let us look deeper into the biological reality of this mental shift and how it affects your physical well-being. When we allow outside events to dictate our internal state, we keep our nervous system in a state of high alert. The amygdala, the brain's alarm center, is constantly firing, sending signals to release stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Over time, this chronic stress response degrades our physical health, clouds our judgment, and leaves us feeling perpetually exhausted and burned out. However, when we exercise our power over our minds, we activate the prefrontal cortex, the seat of our higher intelligence. This part of the brain is responsible for logical thinking, emotional regulation, and the ability to take a broader perspective. By consciously choosing our interpretation of events, we are effectively telling our nervous system that we are safe and in control. We are signaling to our body that the perceived threat is merely a mental construct that we have the power to dismantle. This physiological shift allows us to remain creative, resourceful, and energetic even in the most high-pressure situations. It is the defining difference between a person who freezes in a crisis and a person who sees the way through it. Think of the mental discipline required to hold on to this truth when life is at its most challenging. The true test of this strength is when you are facing real loss, when you are being treated unjustly, or when you feel completely alone in your struggle. In those moments, the realization that your mind is your own becomes more than a philosophy. It becomes a lifeline. You may not be able to change the fact that the room is dark, but you are the one holding the light within that room. And as long as you hold that light, the darkness can never truly overcome the essence of who you are. This internal sovereignty is the foundation of all true courage and resilience. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the decision that your integrity is more important than the fear of what might happen. Marcus Aurelius understood that our time on this earth is a mere speck in the vastness of eternity and cosmic time. Most of the things we worry about today will be forgotten in a week, a month, or a single year. When we look at our problems from this cosmic perspective, they begin to lose their suffocating power over us. This view from above allows us to see that the outside events we obsess over are often trivial in the grand scheme of a human life. What remains significant is how we chose to think, how we chose to act, and how we treated ourselves and those around us. By focusing on the internal, you align yourself with a source of strength that is not dependent on fleeting trends or shifting opinions. You become rooted in something much deeper than the surface fluctuations of your daily life. This is why people who have mastered their minds often possess a quiet, magnetic sense of peace. They are not easily moved by the chaos of the world, and they do not need constant validation from others. Their peace is self-contained and self-generated, making it truly invincible. You have that same potential within you right now, waiting to be acknowledged and activated through practice. It starts with a single thought and the decision to stop blaming the world for your internal unrest. It starts when you decide that your mental state is your responsibility and yours alone to cultivate. From that moment on, you are no longer a passenger in your own life. You are the one steering the ship. The road may be bumpy, the weather may be poor, and the traffic may be heavy at times, but you are the one with your hands firmly on the wheel, deciding the direction and the destination. This is the ultimate freedom that no external force can ever take away from you. This is the strength that allows you to face the world with a sense of purpose, not because the world is perfect, but because you are whole. And in that wholeness, you find a peace that surpasses all understanding and all external circumstances. Realize this power, and you will find the strength to be exactly who you were meant to be. Your mind is your kingdom. Rule it with wisdom, and you will finally be free.